We get the full update today on Togens Fly Shop and how the new owner, Brad Babich, became a fly shop owner almost overnight. We find out how he went from flipping auto parts to the corporate life and then went all in on the fly shop. We also discover what Togens is doing to set themselves apart and deliver to their ideal customer every time. That's you. This is the Wet Fly Swing podcast where I show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for that big trip, and what you can do to give back to the fish species we all love. Hey, I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. I grew up around a fly shop and have created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in this country. I've also interviewed more of the greatest fly anglers than just about anyone out there. Brad Babich, head man at Togens Fly Shop, shares a story of how he purchased Togens and in one weekend made the long trek up to British Columbia and back to Colorado with over 10,000 SKUs and all completed in a long weekend. We get that story today. Plus, we're going to hear about the history and how the shop passed from Canada and now has made its way to Colorado and how this has surprised a few customers along the way. Plus, you're going to get a little bit of car talk. We love car talk. You're going to hear about Brad's passion for BMWs. We dig into that today. All right, Togens Fly Shop, the full story uncovered today. Here we go. Brad Babich from TogensFlyShop.com. How you doing, Brad?
Good. Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for doing this today. We've been talking about this for a little while. There's been a big transition. It's pretty cool. Togens was, for a period, was up in Canada, and I worked with Justin there, and you and your partner recently purchased Togens and moved the operation to Colorado. I think there was already a lot of U.S. based commerce going on with Togens, before. But we're going to talk about that today. How you came to own Togens Fly Shop, and we're getting into all that. But before we get there, take us back to fly fishing. How'd you get into it? What's your first memory? Have you been doing it a while, or are you kind of newer to it?
Yeah, sure. Wow. Okay. So, my start in fly fishing, well, I guess take it back all the way. I started fishing when I was like 3 years old. I mean, the little like click button, tiny fiberglass fishing pole standing off the end of my parents' dock as early as I could basically do it on my own. And somewhere around the age of maybe 9 or 10, my dad actually got an antique fly rod from like a garage sale or something like that. And I saw him, trying to figure it out and take a crack at it. And so naturally I got an interest in that and wanted to start messing around with it myself. So I actually ended up with like one of those all-in-one kits that comes with the rod, the reel, the line. Everything comes with like a box of like really awful factory tied dry flies, generic, little woolly buggers or whatever. And I think it was from Walmart. The thing had to have been the equivalent of a 9 or 10 weight rod, 3/4 of an inch thick in diameter, like, stiff as a rock. But, and I would take that thing out of my parents' lake and just flick dry flies around for panfish, little bluegills and crappies. This was in northern Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
And I did that for a while, but to be honest, most of my life growing up, I was in the Midwest. So I was doing a lot of sport bait cast fishing, largemouth bass, northern pike, panfish, things of that nature. And then in my mid-20s, I moved out to Colorado and really started to figure out what fly fishing was and how dead serious it is and how incredibly technical it is by comparison to normal bass fishing or sport fishing, where, not to say that those can't be technical, but fly fishing, like if you don't nail it with picking the right patterns and setting everything up correctly and going to the right spots, like you're not catching anything ever.
Right.
When I first got started out here, I was going an entire season getting skunked because I was trying to figure it out on my own. And there's a lot to it, but I hope that answers your question.
It does. No, I mean, I think that's the cool thing about fly fishing, because it can be, there's so much, but it can be really challenging. You could definitely go and get skunked for multiple days. I mean, we've all been skunked. I've talked to people who have been skunked for, years, but
yeah,
hopefully it doesn't, get that way for most people. And that's where obviously the podcast is here to help put that resource out there. And you guys also, your videos, right, for fly tying and everything. We're going to talk about that. But so when did Togens, because did you had this thought in your mind you were going to own a fly shop, or did this come on quick?
Yeah, no, to be honest, I've always had sort of an entrepreneurial mindset my whole life. I've always done different sort of side projects and little hustles on the side to make some extra money. My whole life I've been a big car guy. And so back in like late high school years and all through college and even into my early 20s, I was going around to like junkyards buying different car parts that I knew were really, really expensive to buy new.
Hmm.
But if I could find like good used examples, then I could turn around and flip them on eBay. And so I'd buy something, a junkyard for $7 and go clean it up and sell it online for like 200. And so, I always had sort of this like ways to come up and, make extra money. And so, but to answer your question, I've always just sort of worked corporate jobs, sales and marketing background. And my business partner, Tom, who's actually an investment banker by day and a fly shop owner by night, but he had always kind of had this vision of owning and operating one or multiple small businesses and hopefully someday finding a way to kind of transition out of, again, sort of that big business sort of corporate world and get into things that are more like his own that he can take control of and take ownership of. And so he had been out kind of looking around at some different opportunities, some different businesses, and he's not really into fishing, nearly to the degree that I am. And so, one day he came upon Togens Fly Shop, which was listed for sale as a business, which we can get into. And he shot me a link and goes, "Hey, check out this business that's for sale." And, again, at the time I was working a job and completely unrelated. It was a outside sales role for a technology company. And I took a look at it and go, yeah, it looks awesome. I mean, fly tying, fly fishing, like, I love it, but I didn't really think much else of it. And then we kind of got to a point where he inquired and started chatting with them. And he goes, "Hey, I'm talking to these folks. Like, do you want to hop on some of these calls and check it out?" And next thing you know, a couple months later, we are kind of wrapping up paperwork and closing the deal and assuming responsibility for this company. And so it happened pretty fast and it was pretty exciting, but kind of just one of those right place, the right time, opportunity fell into our lap. So
amazing. That's really cool. Yeah. So, and what is Togens? You guys have a lot of fly time. What do you think that Togens does best? I know you guys have a lot of videos and things like that, but what is your focus? What is the value you guys provide out there?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing in fly tying is with any given pattern or fly, there are infinite different ways that you can achieve the same result. If you want to tie whatever it is, a hopper or parachute atoms, I mean, you name the fly, and there's no like, this is the one and only way to do it. These are the materials. And so a big thing for us is having a broad offering of products to try to cover as much as we possibly can so that if someone has a particular fly in mind and they think these are the materials that I need, that there's a good chance that we'll have the materials for them. But with that, that can be challenging. I mean, there's hundreds of companies out there. There's thousands of products. So sort of keeping everything in stock to satisfy everybody's needs, everybody's desires for what they want to tie and what they're after is sort of the constant effort for us. But something that we have tried to really lean into and embrace since taking over the company is coming out with these fly pattern specific kits. We've got a really, really solid pro staff of professional fly tyers and guides and professional anglers out there that will create these videos for us, some of their favorite patterns, some of their most effective patterns for where they live, whether it's British Columbia or whether it's right here in Colorado or whether it's East Coast, New York or Ohio, all over the place. And they will tie video and then they will provide the materials that they use in said video. And then what we're doing is we're actually creating these sort of fly kits where, for example, woolly bugger, one of the most common first pattern everybody ties. And so you purchase one of these kits from us, it's going to come with all the materials that you need to tie 24 of these things. And then it's going to come with a QR code right on the packaging where you scan it, pops you open to a YouTube video that gets you started on how to step-by-step tie this fly, which for some people, obviously advanced, even some intermediate people, they're like, well, I've already got half the stuff. I don't want to do it. And that's fine. They can watch the video for entertainment or maybe get a new take on how to tie that fly. But for a lot of people that are just getting into it, it can be really overwhelming because, like I said, there's 50 different ways to tie a fly. And so people think that if they buy UTC thread instead of Semper Fly thread, that they're going to somehow mess up the pattern, when in actuality, go for it. Fly tying truly is a craft. It's an art. And you can't really do it wrong. Like if it works and it catches fish, then go for it. I mean, and that's been proven a million times over in the past. I mean, people, I hate to see it because obviously we're in the business of selling fly tying materials, but there's entire groups out there of people that pride themselves on finding fly tying materials that aren't fly tying materials, where they're going and buying an actual mop from the dollar store and cutting the ends off and tying little mop flies with it versus buying mop chenille from Fly Shop. And so that right there is just sort of a testament to the fact that if it looks right and it works for you, then go for it and tie it.
That's it. And are you guys, do you feel like your target customers, you're really focusing it on people newer to fly tying, or do you have some resources for people kind of a little higher up on the skill level?
Yeah, no, I mean, we obviously want to include everybody. And so, again, we're offering everything from these intro fly tying kits, some super simple patterns, and cost effective, sort of basic staple materials, all the way up to hard to find, hard to get whiting saddles and whole pheasant skins where you're getting enough feathers theoretically to last you for a lifetime, and different types of deer and elk and cool, unique animal products for tying flies that really are probably going to be something that someone who's just getting into it, unless they're following an exact recipe, isn't even going to know what to do with. So again, yeah, I mean, everywhere from I'm tying my first fly ever to I've been tying flies for, I think the most I've ever heard was a gentleman called me who said he's been tying flies for 75 years.
Oh, wow.
He was 90 years old. He said he's been tying flies since he was 15. Yeah. And he knew exactly what he wanted. He had never even been on our website. And he just called me and he said, I need this, 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 this. Here's my credit card number. And he didn't need to see it. Nothing, like because he's been using it forever.
How'd you find that? How'd that guy find you, or how'd you find that guy?
I think that it was probably just an internet search and he managed to find our phone number. But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because fly tying, I think, is going through like a bit of a transition. Like, I don't know because I haven't been in it long enough to know if there was ever really a lull, but a lot of fly tyers that I encounter are older gentlemen, I think, that are retired and want fun, new hobby, or maybe they've been doing it their whole life. But I think it's these guys that have the time where they can sit down and crank out a ton of flies. I mean, I've got a couple favorite customers that are these gentlemen where they'll tie flies for themselves as well as their friends, as well as some guides. I mean, they're tying over the winter, getting ready for the following season. I mean, there's some guys that'll tie 5,000 flies, 7,000 flies in an off season. And so I think that a lot of the people that were really hardcore fly tyers were some of these sort of veterans of fly fishing and older gentlemen. But now with everything with YouTube and with podcasts and social media, that we're getting sort of a new generation where we're getting a lot of younger people that are getting into it and starting to get enthusiastic about it. And there's these Instagram accounts that have 50,000, 100,000 followers where they're filming this really sort of catchy, it's dumb to say like viral, but sort of that really sort of jump cutty, attention grabbing type.
Oh, yeah.
Time lapse fly tying with like cool music over the top. And that's something that just never existed before. But I think it's really getting people more excited and kind of enthusiastic about getting into it. So
that's the key. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to keep up with it all because it's always changing. And I guess that's just business in general. Things are always changing. So you got to keep testing things and doing trying new things and keep with what's working, obviously.
That's a big part of it because obviously you want to keep everybody happy. So a good example is, a lot of businesses that are sort of set up like Togens, where we're 95% online presence, hoping that people just go click, click, click and check out and we get the order and fulfill their order. But there are those people that want to call, they want to have a conversation. And a lot of e-commerce style businesses literally don't have a phone number. I mean, if you have a problem, if you have a question, if you have a complaint, if you want to place an order, there's nothing. It's here, fill out this email form and we'll get back to you at some point. And so something that we decided to continue to do when we took over the business, and something that we will always continue to do, is have a phone. And so I have customers all the time that call me and place their orders that way. And if we suddenly decided to not have a phone anymore, they wouldn't just go, okay, well, I'll just order online. They just wouldn't buy from us. They wouldn't. I don't know that they would know how to. I mean, I've got some gentlemen that, like I said, the 90-year-old gentleman, but I've got people that are way out in Newfoundland that I got to go get my wife to read my credit card number because I can barely see anymore. And he's like, I don't have a computer. And some of these guys are old school. And so for them having the ability to just give me a call and say, I need this, or I'm looking for something like that, I think is huge for those people.
That's huge. That is, yeah. I think that's smart because, in this day and age when everybody's, people are trying to scale and get yourself out of the business, really, you guys are doing something that's not totally scalable. I mean, you could always get somebody on the calls, but I mean, basically what you're saying is somebody calls, they're probably going to get you on the phone likely. Is that the case?
In this day and age of outsourced customer service and just everything is part of like a larger entity. And so with us, we are truly a small family owned and operated business. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the face of the brand. And so people will see my name on emails or they'll see my name. I sign every order that we send out. I'll say, thanks for your order, Brad. And so people will call and they'll be talking for a minute and then they'll go, is this Brad? And I'll go, yep. And so I think for them being able to like have a person to call and know that they're going to be able to speak with, or let's say mistakes happen and, something was incorrect about their order, left off of their order or out of stock, then there's somebody that they can hold accountable versus just, again, getting a customer service person that goes, yeah, we're sorry, blah, blah, blah. But I can explain what happened and I can say, oh yeah, well, this or that. And yeah, I'll do whatever I can to make it right. Obviously, I think, there's not just sort of that anonymous at customer service that people can hide behind. Yeah. So,
yeah. Call center. I just did that today, actually. Before we got on, shout out to Spectrum, right? We all need our Wi-Fi. I mean, what a cool experience that was. I mean, the service was unbelievable. I mean, I'm all for any virtual assistants, over the seas, whatever, people that maybe aren't English as first speaking. But I mean, I called this company, brand new thing. I wasn't quite sure, hooked it up, called. I mean, they've been on it every point of the way. You know what I mean? Just super on it. And so that experience is huge. You know what I mean? You can't, if I was to get somebody, and you do this a lot, right? You get somebody, it's hard to figure out what's going on. Maybe you don't have a good call. I mean, that's the whole experience. So what you're saying is that with Togens, you guys are really kind of embracing that. And it's almost like the fly shop. I mean, it is the fly shop, right? You think of the brick and mortar. That's why people go into the brick and mortars. They love to have that connection. And I think with Togens, you guys are still basically keeping that sort of thing going.
Exactly. I mean, and again, I won't rush anybody off the phone, even if it's a day that I'm absolutely slammed. I mean, I'll have customers call and chat with me for 30, 45 minutes. I'll have people where they are kind of spitballing some ideas where they go, well, I normally tie this fly with this, but you can't really get it anymore. And so then I'll kind of shoot some alternatives at them. And it's almost kind of like I'm shopping for them. So they'll call me and I'll legitimately sort of walk around our facility and I'll say, okay, well, yeah, we could do this. And they go, yeah, well then let me get some of that marabou and I'll grab, them a pack of rusty brown marabou and I'll literally go around essentially with them on the phone and pick their order for them while I'm there with them. And I'll say, okay, well, great. Well, since I picked the order while talking to you here on the phone for you, I can ship it out today because I've already grabbed it. And so I think people do really tend to appreciate that personal touch.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we've talked a little bit about, the kits. The cool thing about the kits is we've been using these as we've been doing some of these giveaway events that you guys are involved in. We're kicking off another one, I think, to Alaska, which is going to be a huge event. What do you guys, remind us again on those kits, what do you have? Are they all the same? Are there multiple styles? Do you mix up the materials? How does that look?
As I mentioned, obviously before, we've got the individual flies, there's a specific fly that you're after, or a lot of the time we will try to do, so we publish as best as we can. We try to publish every single week a new fly tying video. Usually they are on Thursdays. We'll send out an email with a link to our YouTube and there will be some kind of a new pattern. And then a lot of the time we'll try to have a kit ready to go to accompany that video so that if someone goes, oh, that fly's awesome, I want it, rather than having to go out and try to find all the different individual materials, they can just go click and just buy the whole kit. It's going to send them the materials and send them, the instructional video. But to back up, originally what we kind of started off with was what we call our beginner fly tying kit. And so this kit is intended to be for someone that is just getting into fly tying. So the kit itself comes with everything that you need to start tying flies with the exception of a vise. which we do sell. And right in the listing on our website, we've got a link to a number of different vices that we carry. But the kit comes with all the materials that you need to tie 5 different fly patterns. And again, these are like staples in everybody's fly box. I mean, it's like woolly bugger and copper john. And then there's, a couple different nymph patterns in there. And so really, like, you could tie that box and go to most fishing spots, provided that it's not overly pressured or have the most picky, intelligent fish in the world. And you could probably come up with some kind of combination of flies out of that kit to have success going out anywhere. We tried to keep it really common and sort of universal in that sense. But so it's going to come with everything that you need to tie a couple dozen of 5 different patterns of fly. And then in addition to that, it's going to come with some loon resins. So, again, some of these fly kits will come with everything except for like the big ticket items. So you're going to still need resin. You're going to still need curing light, things like that. But this kit's going to come with resin. It's going to come with a curing light. It's going to come with a nice little silicone hook and bead mat to put down your workstation. I'm sure anybody that's tied with and without one of those knows the struggle of you're trying to, thread a bead onto a hook and it slips out of your fingers and then bounces off your table and then it's gone forever, especially if you're working in a carpeted space. I only find the beads when I hear the vacuum sucking them up a week later. But, in addition to that, it's going to be coming with our premium toolkit. So again, bobbin threader, bobbin holder, scissors. What else? It's going to be coming with bodkin to do little tiny detail work with adhesives and resins on your flies. So really the thing, it's a great value. It's, I want to say like $165 USD, somewhere around there. And honestly, it's a pretty crazy value for the amount of stuff that you're getting. We really pack as much as we possibly can into these boxes. So for the giveaways, for example, we think it's a great option to offer because we just sent like a fly kit or perhaps like our fly tire box, which just comes with sort of randomized assortment of materials. If somebody who won that giveaway doesn't already tie flies, they're not going to be able to do anything with it. But really, you could take this box, fork it over to anybody, and they can go buy. Obviously, the vice market is a whole crazy beast in itself. It's almost obviously a whole category within fishing, but you can spend $2,000 on a vise if you want to, but also you can spend $35 on a vise. You can go buy the most basic non-rotary clamp-on vise, which, we do offer on our site. So again, for I think probably $200 all in, you can tie enough flies to fill a fly box, which also is included in the kit. We provide one of our silicone fly boxes with that kit.
Oh, okay. So that's the kit. And then so on these videos, maybe you could talk about some of these people. And I think we've definitely had a few of them on the podcast, but who are your tires? Maybe talk about a few of them, maybe who they are and then how you find those people that are out there.
Yeah. So some of our best contributors to these videos, you're spot on there. Veterans of fly fishing and fly tying that you've sat down and spoken with before. So Brandon Malzahn, I think he's been on your podcast multiple times. Awesome guy. I can't say enough good things about him. He is he's truly like an artist with fly tying. He gets really creative and sort of out of the box with, he's lighting stuff on fire and he's coming up with unique and creative materials. We had one that we did, a few months back where I believe the fly was the beauty back swimmer was the name of the fly. And the bug actually has sort of like a little shelled back. And he was using like an acrylic fingernail from a beauty salon.
Oh, wow.
And, again, just coming up with cool, unique ways. He just did a video for us. I want to say it was the video that we did this week or the past week where I don't know if he didn't have mono eyes on hand or what the situation was. He just took a piece of monofilament line, or you could use a piece of old leader or whatever, and he burnt it and sort of tapped the ends and right there created some mono eyes. And I'm just thinking wow, that's genius, and so simple. But yeah, so Brandon, is a valued member of our team. He does a lot of great videos, a lot of really good content. Stanton Jack's another one, who's been on your podcast before. He's out there in BC winning fly fishing competitions and getting on podiums, which is fascinating and awesome, to see him doing that. So, another guy, he's tying fly since he was a kid and does really great work for us. And, and then we've got people sort of all over the place. We've got right here in Colorado, we've got Kat Toy. She's just an absolute legend. She is posting almost daily on Instagram, just fish that would be people's personal best, like ever. And it's just like a Tuesday for her. She's a really skilled fly tyer as well. She's contributed to kits in the past. I know right now she's actually sort of changing things up a little bit professionally and giving herself more time to lean into fly fishing guiding and leaning more into fly tying. So, we're excited to start doing more with her. Hopefully you guys will start to see her, more on our YouTube channel, tying up some cool patterns for us. But most recently, we just added a young man named Aiden Patterson, who is actually out on the East Coast here in the States. And again, I mean, this was I think he's in college, so he's in his early 20s. And really, he was tying amazing flies. I mean, I was sort of keeping an eye on his Instagram, and I was watching it go from even just the production quality of his content, posting pretty good pictures to like better pictures to like really good pictures to then like decent videos to then like really good videos. And this was kind of like one of these stories that, you maybe hear of in like skateboarding or something from back in the day. But I mean, he would post this, and every single day he would just tag Togens every day. Every video he posted, he would tag Togens, tag Togens, tag Togens. And it's from, I'm like, who is this kid? And then I kind of kept watching him. And then really he got to the point where he was so good and he was so loyal to us, just sort of for no reason, other than the fact that he liked us and wanted to support us, that I reached out and I said, hey man, like, you want to start tying some of those for us? We'll use your videos for kits and we'll use some of your content for social media. And, then we started talking, and now we've got sort of a great relationship back and forth where we're supplying him with all the different materials that he needs to tie flies. And in exchange, he's tying awesome new patterns for us to create. So, I don't think that sort of format is incredibly uncommon in fly tying, these sort of pro staffs and pro teams.
Right.
Everybody seems to have them. But for us, I think we've got a bit of a smaller pro staff. We've got maybe 9 or 10 people on it. And it's really just due to the fact that we don't want to just blast it out to everybody. We don't want to make it available to everybody. Like, we want to make sure that like everybody we bring on is really creating top-notch content, that they kind of share similar values and morals. Like the Togens pro staff is like a friendly group. We've got our own sort of separate little chat that we're all sort of talking in and connecting in, and everybody kind of supports each other out there as far as like social media. Even the folks that haven't ever met each other and are in a completely other country, like they're liking each other's stuff on social media and commenting and really supportive of each other. So yeah, I mean, in some cases, completely long answer to your question, but sometimes they find us and sometimes we find them. So we'll have people reach out to us that'll say, hey, like, do you guys have an application for your pro staff? And you can, approach it that way. Or there's people where, like with Aiden, where he never asked us for anything. I mean, I reached out to him and I said, hey, dude, I love what you're doing. Any chance you would want to join our pro staff? And so a little bit of both in that sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you guys, I mean, I know when Togens was in Canada, there was definitely a strong Stillwater focus. And I know a lot of the videos, you mentioned some, I think Brandon and Stanton. But are you guys changing? Is Stillwater still a focus for you guys? Or are you guys jumping into like all fly fishing? Or maybe talk about that a little bit. What's your focus?
Yeah, well, so I think historically it was a strong focus for Togens. Going back to the early days, back in 2005, next year will be 20 years that Togens has been in business. Going all the way back, that was really the focus of the business, was that interior BC, Stillwater, chironomid focus. And so some of our best selling products are for that exact purpose. Our Curve Nymph 2X hook is by far our most popular hook, and that hook is specifically designed for tying chironomids to go fish those Stillwater lakes. And so a lot of our products are pre-cut anesthetic bag. We've got a million different bead options for whatever combination you could possibly ever want. And so, yes, that was a major focus of the business and still is. We absolutely want to, keep all of our customers happy from day one till current, but we also want to open up to everyone. And so, for example, bringing on, our guy Aiden, for example, as I mentioned, he's out on the East Coast. So, I mean, he's fishing rivers in New York and Pennsylvania and Ohio. And so some of the flies that he's tying are completely and absolutely different for what you'd be fishing in BC, for example. And so I think that it's definitely a goal of ours to continue to sort of broaden our offering and especially broaden the content that we're putting out to be inclusive of everybody. I mean, something that I would really love to branch into even more so would be, saltwater, for example. I mean, saltwater fly fishing is huge. It's absolutely gigantic. And so it'd be really cool at some point to bring someone on the pro staff who can show us tying saltwater bait fish or little crabs. Like, I mean, some of those flies are some of the coolest that I've seen. Like, you see those little like sand crabs that have so much detail and completely different materials from what you would find in some of these really detailed dry flies that you see, or even the little flashy chironomid nymphs. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a part of our plan to grow into all facets of fly fishing and fly tying.
Perfect. Well, let's hear. I mean, I'm not even sure if we've captured the history in other podcasts, but talk about that. Do you know the whole history of Togen? I mean, 20 years is amazing, but it's been owned by multiple people over those years. Do you know that history?
I know it a little bit, and I'm sure there's people out there. Actually, I know that there's people out there that know better than I do because we have customers that have been with us since day one. And so they call me, they tell me stories about the original owner. But as I understand it, the original owner of Togens was a gentleman, and I'm hoping that I pronounce his last name correctly, but I believe his name was Bill Shavink. And he was, as I understand it, interior BC, stillwater fly fishing legend, fishing the Kamloops area and kind of knew everybody and was just one of these sort of expert fly fishermen, fly tying dudes. And so this is where I don't know where the actual nickname came from, but people called him Mr. Togen, as I understand it. And so that's where Togens Fly Shop came from. Was he started this business to sell fly tying supplies, and he went by Mr. Togen, and so he started Togens Fly Shop. But then,
and who is Mr. Togen? Where did the Togen, that name? What is Togen?
Yeah, that's the only part that I'm missing. And so, yeah, if anybody knows, give me a call at the shop and I'd love to hear the story. But yeah, and again, like I've had customers on the phone with like, yeah, I knew Bill back in the day and blah, blah, blah. And so that's always cool to hear. But, and then, from there, as I understand it, I think when he started the business, he was already a bit of an older gentleman. And so then as he got even older, I think he started to have some health considerations and, things of that nature. And so he eventually sold the business to a couple from the Vancouver area in British Columbia, Dave and Sherry LaPatriello, who, are Justin, who you've spoken with in the past. That's his family. Those are his parents. And so they bought the business and ran it as a family operation for a number of years after taking it over from Bill, who, I should mention was a friend of theirs. And so I think it was one of these, like, the business was never like formally posted for sale or anything like that. It was just, they knew him and they thought it would be a cool opportunity and he needed to sort of exit the business. And so they took it over from him and they ran the business for a number of years. And then I think as of most recently, they just found themselves wanting to focus on sort of relaxing and chilling and going and fishing. They're both super diehard, passionate anglers, and they spend, their whole summers out in those interior BC stillwater lakes, chironomid fishing for monsters out there, as everybody does. And so I think they reached a point where the business was in a good spot and they were just sort of looking to move on to the next thing for them. And so that's where they posted it up for sale, and then we came along. And yeah, I think that's where some customers, they they think, when Togens moved to the US that it was like this big, crazy, like hostile takeover, like Orvis bought them and like,
oh, right,
Togens is going to be in like Target and Walmart next year. And it's like, no, like they just sort of done what they wanted to do with the business and we're looking to move on to other things. And we saw an opportunity and wanted to sort of keep it going and see if we can continue to grow the business and keep all the customers happy. And so kind of where we're at.
Yep, that's it. That's how it happened. That's really cool. So you guys are rolling there. What has been, I mean, you guys have been in there. How long has it been now since you've been there?
We will be 1 year in October.
Yeah, one year in October.
Yeah, we moved the business down here right around Halloween of last year.
Yeah. What was that like moving? Was that a major operation? Because where were they at? Were they up in BC?
So they were in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, which is like 45 minutes outside of downtown Vancouver. And obviously we're in Boulder, Colorado. And so that's, I forget what it is. It's like 2,000 miles or something. It's far. But so, I mean, we could do an entire podcast episode on that story. But essentially, to summarize it, Tom and I flew up there on it was like a Wednesday or Thursday, and the business was operational and shipping orders, up until that Friday afternoon out of Port Coquitlam. And our intent was to be shipping orders out of Boulder the following Monday, which is kind of insane when you think about it. I mean, I just got an email from a fly tying distributor yesterday saying that they were moving facilities and that they would be down for like 2 weeks. And we were trying to completely move countries, offices, facilities, everything over a weekend.
Dang.
And we just about did it. And to put it into perspective, we didn't have a team of people. We didn't have a logistics company. We did it as if someone was moving their first apartment. We literally drove a U-Haul truck from Seattle, Washington, up to Port Coquitlam, and we stopped shipping orders on Friday. And then we immediately started packing up tens of thousands of products. I mean, 4,000 SKUs and quite literally tens of thousands of individual products into a U-Haul, and we just hit the road. I mean, I don't know, whatever it was. It's like a 28-hour drive or something. Ended up getting snagged at the Canadian border. We had some kind of paperwork that was filled out incorrectly, and we ended up having to basically hang out for, I forget what it was. It was like 36 hours, but it felt like an eternity while we had someone frantically trying to get everything sort of situated for us before we were able to continue on our way. But it was a wild, wild adventure, but we just about did it. Yeah, I want to say it was like the following, maybe Tuesday, that we got all caught up on the orders from the time that we stopped in BC to the time that we resumed in Boulder.
Wow. So you're going, now that you've been in your first year, what has been the biggest challenge, do you think? And, has there been any surprises or challenges, or how's it been going?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge overall, and this was just something that learning curve, life lesson, but we had no idea how difficult shipping from the United States to Canada would be. Expensive and just difficult and challenging. And I mean, to be quite honest, a large number, our US customers, will never know this struggle, but we've had Canadian customers that have been, furious with us. We've had Canadian customers that have quite frankly left us. We've had others that remained loyal and sort of wrote it out with us. But starting off, I mean, we went through a number of different shipping programs, just trying to figure out what was going to be the perfect balance of get to the customers quickly, not cost an arm and a leg. And really, it's just blown my mind that for two countries that share a massive land border and effectively have no issues with each other. We're not at war with Canada or anything. We don't have any trade embargoes, anything. It should be so simple. It should be no different than shipping from here to California or Florida, wherever.
I know.
And really, what we found for the longest time was either shipping costs were reasonable and highly unreliable, or would take forever, to the point where, I mean, we would ship something to someone in Canada and it would take a month to get to them, which is it's just insane. Yeah. Or the shipping was wildly expensive and it would get to them incredibly fast, and almost to the point where they go, I don't need it that fast. That's definitely been the biggest challenge for us, is trying to find that solution to where we can get our products to our customers in Canada quickly and in a cost-effective way. And something that we've tried to maintain the whole time that we've been in business is offering these free shipping thresholds for people. And so a lot of the time, especially with the people that I mentioned earlier on that are tying an insane amount of flies, maybe over the winter or during the off season or whatever it is, they're going through a ton of materials. So rather than buying, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there, we try to encourage people, like, if you can, sort of either hold off or plan ahead and try to put together these orders that are going to get you to that free shipping threshold, because it's ultimately going to save you a decent bit of money having to not pay repeatedly for shipping. But, I think in this day and age, with everybody getting everything off Amazon, shipping, and I see it myself, I look at a shipping charge and I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't pay anything for shipping, because in people's minds, yeah, they're, even though they're paying for a membership, in their minds, they're not paying for shipping. So then they see that shipping charge and they're,
Yeah, they're paying 15, they're paying 100, a couple $100 almost a year for the Prime, right?
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, and I certainly, business is business, and it's tough, and it's brutal out there, and people would not believe it. But any of our customers that have ever been upset that they're paying too much for shipping, what they don't realize is that we're actually subsidizing that shipping cost. So on every order that goes to Canada, we are actually eating a portion of that shipping cost to try to keep it as reasonable as possible for them. And so we've built that in basically to our cost structure, but
Right.
it's obviously it's tough. And so that's something that we're working on a daily basis. I mean, like I said, we've gone through probably half a dozen different shipping programs for Canada, and every day we are looking to see what's a way that we can offer a better service. And so something that we're continually working to improve.
Yep, that's it. Well, let's take it out here with our bucket list trip shout out segment. And I always like to think of, where are we going next? And I mentioned at the start, we're heading up to Alaska. We're doing the giveaway event this year. And then in 25, I'm going to be taking that trip driving through Canada because we're planning on doing a full road trip up there. And it's going to be exciting. I'm pretty fired up about that trip. But for you, what is, to take us out of here, we haven't even talked about your home waters now and all that, but do you have a trip that you want to get out on, kind of a bucket list trip or anything locally?
That's a great question. I mean, something that for me has always really caught my interest, with fly fishing is the fact that it's all over the world. It's not like there's a lot of different types of fishing that don't exist everywhere, and I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, let's say, muskie fishing, the last giveaway was a muskie thing. You're not going to go to like Australia and fish for muskie. Like muskie are in one place in the world, but you go anywhere in the world and there's trout fishing. I mean, it's fascinating. Like, a couple of years ago, I went with my wife to Slovenia, tiny little country in Europe, and we were on this hike and I looked down and there's like a giant brown trout just sitting there in a river. And I'm like, oh my God, like I wish I had my fishing gear. But yeah, so something, I'd love to go somewhere really, really foreign in that sense, be it New Zealand or like South America, and do one of these absolutely epic, beautiful, fly fishing excursions.
Yeah, for trout.
For trout, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the cool thing. And I always find that as the challenge too, because we know we all have these lives that are limited time wise, and you can't do all this. So you got to kind of choose where you're going to go. But I think that would be, New Zealand, Australia, any of those even. Cool. All right. We got that. Well, let's go in a couple of random ones as we take it out here. First, let's do our kind of takeaway segment from today. So, I always think of like the 3 takeaways, we were talking about today. If somebody is maybe kind of newer to the Togens or hasn't dove in, what are the 3 things you're telling them, that basically they should be thinking out before they join, before they jump in your shop and buy something? Like, is it focused on, because you guys have other gear other than the fly tying stuff, right? Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Are you guys still doing a little miscellaneous mix of stuff?
Yeah, we've got a little bit of everything. Obviously, we are a fly tying focused shop. So a lot of the time, if you go into a traditional fly shop, they might have one of those like spinning sunglass carousel rack things with some fly tying materials, or maybe they have a whole corner of their shop that's fly tying. But, a lot of the time you either have to go online or you've got to find, that really specialty shop. I mean, we've got hundreds of different sizes and styles of hooks that are our own Togens brand. Like I said, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different styles of beads, sizes of beads, everything Togens brand. So as far as fly tying, we're the place. But yeah, I mean, we're carrying some rods, we're carrying some reels, we're carrying some nets. We try to work with companies that are not just necessarily like, I don't want to name any companies, but just like these gigantic brands out there. So for rods and reels, we're buying reels from a gentleman right in British Columbia, a company called Forged. This guy, Richard, he lives, I don't know, I think maybe you've had him on, but I don't recall. But yes, I mean, he lives, on Vancouver Island, right in British Columbia. I mean, super, rooted in the fly fishing community up there. So we're carrying his reels, and then there's a company that's from Finland called Vision, really incredible products.
Yeah.
We're carrying their rods, we're carrying their reels. People really love those products. I have customers that are calling me back after they bought one saying, this is way better than I thought it would be. And I'm like, yeah, like they're an excellent company. They just don't have a huge presence in North America, but they're really quality product. And so obviously to a company fly tying, we're carrying Peak Vices. That's a really awesome company there. They were actually, until fairly recently, they were essentially down the road from us here in Colorado. And then they just moved to Texas in the last maybe 6 months or so. But if you go and ask anybody, what vice should I buy for fly tying? Peak is going to be 50% of the answers that you're going to get. Basically, the consensus is that you can't go wrong with that product. That nobody buys that vice and is mad or disappointed that they did. But, another shout out, I guess, would be Moby nets. So obviously you can go out and buy a carbon fiber net with a cool trout pattern on the handle, whatever. But we've got a gentleman, again, British Columbia, And this guy's literally building them like in a workshop in his home. Every single net is custom made to order. So there's a bit of a lead time on them, obviously, just depending on how many he's got to do at any given point. But something that's pretty awesome about them is he'll do free customizations for people. So if you want to monogram, your initials or your name or your logo, whatever it is, whether it's for sentimental value or whether it's so that if you leave your net at the river, then you know that that's your net when you're trying to find it, later. Again, great product. Like a lot of these smaller brands, like trying to sort of keep that small scale economy alive versus just going and buying from China supplier. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have some Loon products. You mentioned those earlier, the Loon stuff. But I mean, pretty much if somebody goes to your site and they search for whatever as far as fly tying, I mean, you guys will likely have it covered. Is that pretty much?
We will either have it or we will have a good substitution for it. Or to be quite honest, because we are a smaller scale than some of these giants out there, like I said, outsource customer service, whatever. I just had a gentleman call me yesterday looking for a particular product. And I go, I don't have exactly that. And I was like, but actually, let me think. And, one of our suppliers that we work with who's here in the States, I go, I think I can get it for you. And so let me make a couple phone calls and I'll call you back. And so, if I don't have it, I will also do my best to go find it if you're unable to find it elsewhere. We've had multiple instances of that where I'll special order something in for someone and then come to find it's actually an awesome product. And it's sometimes the way that, we find new products that we'll want to carry in stock. And so we're constantly looking to add to our catalog and incorporate new products. And so sometimes it's our customers that bring those products to our attention.
Yeah, perfect. Good. Well, let's take it out here in our random one. You mentioned earlier cars. I'm not a big car, aficionado or anything like that, but you always see an old car and you love it. What was your experience with cars? Were you like an old car guy, or what were the car? Did you build cars, do all that, or what would that look like?
My interest in cars goes back to high school, and it wasn't anything super profound, like my dad or my grandfather were wrenching on like a 1955 whatever, but it was just the friends that I had, my older sister's long-term boyfriend that was into cars and kind of got me interested in cars. But for me, my drug of choice, will say, because cars are a horrible addiction.
All right.
For me, it's European cars. It's specifically BMWs. And it's funny because a lot of people think, oh, BMWs, you must be like a snooty rich kid. And so, yeah, I mean, even in college, it would come up and people would be like, what kind of car do you have? And I'd be like, I have a BMW. They'd be like, oh, wow, fancy. But my first car was $500. It had just short of 200,000 miles on it and barely ran. I dragged it out of a guy's backyard and sort of hobbled the thing together and got it running, and then got it to the point where over the course of owning that car for 7 years was restored back to clean and put together looking just like normal street going car. And then at the point at which, I was able to afford to buy a slightly newer car, but I didn't want to get rid of that car because it was sentimental. I actually ended up turning it into sort of a half street, half track race car for going to road courses. So the car had stripped out interior and roll cage and racing seats and harnesses and everything you need to go take that car to the racetrack. And so to this day, I think, I've lost count, but I think maybe I'm on my eighth BMW or something like that.
Oh, really? What year was the one you turned into the racetrack car?
Yeah, the first one, it was a 1993 BMW 325 IS. And then presently I have essentially almost the same car, but 20 years newer. So I drive a 2014 BMW 335i, which is just the continuation of that 3 Series. And so it's I'm fairly hooked in that sense. Sometimes I wish I weren't, because obviously cars can be expensive and, a huge headache when, I even think about my car currently. It's 10 years old at this point. And in my mind, it's still a new, fresh looking car because, I always drove really old cars. But I'm at this point, a lot of people don't mess with a 10-year-old car. You start to have weird issues that come along with the car when they start to get that old. So, but I think at this point I'm stuck. So.
Right. I see it. Yeah. I mean, it's cool because the BMW, I mean, what would be so if you were to pick up a new BMW, whatever, I mean, what is that? I mean, because all cars are kind of crazy priced now. It seems super high, but I mean, because the BMW is obviously a higher end car, but do you know, what would that be?
So I'm getting to the point where I don't know if I'm like turning into one of these old guys. Like when I first got into cars, there were these old guys where they were like bitching about fuel injection and, they were like, if it doesn't have a carburetor, I don't want it. And I feel like I'm turning into that guy because I don't quite frankly want a car now that has 30 different screens in it and has all this ridiculous, crazy technology. And so I'm almost to the point where I want my next car, I want to start going backwards again, where it's like, right now I drive a 2014 and I was just thinking about this yesterday where it's like, if I could buy my dream BMW, it would be like a 2010 BMW M3, which is the previous generation, but I want one with no screens, with a manual transmission. Like I'm kind of like burnt out on all the like bells and whistles and technology and Apple CarPlay. Like, my parents just got a new car where you can apparently like wave your hands in the air and like swipe around. You can basically, like if you're getting a phone call and you don't want to accept the phone call, you can just kind of go like, if you can imagine someone going like, shoo, get out of here, and like waving their hand, and you can just like deny the phone call by like flapping your arms there. And I'm like, that's just,
oh, that's funny.
Nobody needs that. So yeah, I think if it were me, I'm going to start going backward and getting into some older, nicer cars. So
yeah, they all look sweet. I mean, when you look at the 2010, the M3, I mean, it looks amazing. I would have no idea. I mean, it looks like a brand new car to me. I mean, they all, and the BMW. So what is it about the BMW versus say, it's German, right? Is that what it is? Is it kind of German engineered? Like, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So BMW's German. Yeah. Funny enough, like, I did mention, obviously like in terms of getting into cars, wrenching on cars, wanting to race cars and stuff like that. It didn't necessarily come from family, but the BMW thing a little bit. So when I was a little kid, my parents did own BMWs. And so I actually came home from the hospital in one. So yeah, I came home from the hospital in a 1988 BMW 325i. And so I actually made a big point of that when my daughter was born and we were going to the hospital to have her. And normally by default, if we were going somewhere, we would hop in my wife's car. She drives a Toyota 4Runner. And I was like, no, we have to take my car because I wanted her to come home from the hospital in a BMW sedan, the same that I did. So I've got like one of those pick stitch things, that you can do on your phone where it puts photos like side by side in a frame. And I've got a picture of me coming home from the hospital in my car seat in the backseat of a BMW. And then I've got a picture of my daughter coming home in the backseat of my BMW, in her car seat. And so that kind of thing, like it kind of has been a part of my life in that sense, but also I just like them. I mean, the three sort of competitors, BMW, Mercedes, Audi, it's always been BMW is the most like sport enthusiast focused car. And then Audi is kind of this blend of like sport and luxury. And then Mercedes is kind of really focused on luxury and comfort. In this day and age, they all have a product for everybody, but that's always kind of been my perspective. And I've just kind of stuck with that over the years. So.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'm looking at the, I just pulled up Car and Driver, 2024 BMW i7. It looks like that thing goes for low end 100,000, high end 170,000.
Yeah, I mean, cars have gotten just absolutely absurd these days. I mean, you look at, the top of the line Range Rover these days, and like, back in the day, back in like the early mid 90s when those cars were first sort of like on the road before they were just like the Safari Land Cruisers. But when they first launched the Land Rover brand, I mean, I think the top of the line, you could maybe option it up to like $60,000. And now if you go buy, a fully loaded long wheelbase Range Rover, they're $230,000. It's a house. I mean, it's literally a house. Everything's gotten out of control, but yeah.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, it's nuts. It's got out of control. Good. Well, we've taken that track. I'm glad we took the track down on the car. So it's good to hear a little bit of that history, but yeah, I think we'll leave it there. We'll take it out. We'll send everybody, if they want to hook in with any of the fly time materials or anything we talked about today, we can send them out to togensflyshop.com. And yeah, I think Brad will leave it there for today. And we'll obviously be doing more stuff as we move forward here. Hopefully get some more of your tires on the podcast. But yeah, appreciate what you do out there. And good to have this chat today. We'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, the call to action is obvious today. Togensflyshop.com. Head over right now. Take a look if you need any fly time materials, hooks, education, videos. If you need anything, check in with Togens. Check in with Brad right now. You can call him up, and like you said, he'll pick up the phone, and you'll be talking directly. All right, we are still looking for a person to fill the Alaska school this year. This is up to, we're going to be doing the road trip session this year. And if you want to head up to Alaska and connect with us and fish for some giant rainbows, you can check in. Just send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com. And in the comments, just put Alaska fishing. And I'll check back with you. All right, the next episode we have going, stay tuned. We got Rick Kustich, who's back on the podcast. This time he's going to be focusing on muskie. Perfect timing as we're getting ready to travel to the muskie school in Wisconsin this year. So, you can't have too much knowledge, and always love having an extra podcast of knowledge and wisdom in the back pocket. And so we're going to hear about Rick and his book on muskie, and we're going to go deep on that on Monday. Stay tuned. All right, I'm out of here. Hope you are having a good weekend, maybe. Hope you're having a good weekday. And if it is evening, morning, or afternoon, I hope you have a great day. Looking forward to checking in, and I'll talk to you soon.